From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador. I'm Carla Gonzalez, and this is from the South. We begin in Colombia. A former FARC commander was shot and killed in southwestern part of the country on Tuesday. Jorge Enrique Corredor, better known as Wilson Saavedra, is the highest-ranking commander to die in a violent attack since the peace agreement was signed in 2016. Two armed men on a motorcycle shot him near the city of Tula in Valle del Cauca department. Saavedra was 49 and involved in an agricultural project with ex-combatants supported by the United Nations. This is unfortunately the latest violent act against members of the community this week. On Sunday, Giovanni Murillas died in similar circumstances in Guaviare. Also, the president of the Community Action Board in Lopez has been killed. 45-year-old Daniel Rojas Zambrano was shot 5 times. He was a social leader and sports promoter in the Lopez Adentro municipality. Activists in Colombia believe he was killed for his role in strengthening the community. Mexico's embassy in Venezuela has provided asylum to opposition lawmaker Franco Manuel Casella. Venezuela's Supreme Court has accused Casella of treason for his participation in the failed coup attempt on April 30. In a statement on Tuesday night, Mexico's foreign minister reaffirmed the country's position of non-intervention in Venezuela. It stressed Mexico's openness to dialogue and commitment to finding a democratic and peaceful solution in the country. It also said Mexico is committed to respecting, protecting, and promoting human rights of all people, regardless of their political affinity. Venezuela's President Nicolás Maduro led a military event in the state of Vargas on Tuesday. Maduro congratulated the Venezuelan army for its continued loyalty. He also praised them for their swift response after a U.S. vessel entered Venezuelan waters a few days ago. Defense Minister Vladimir Padrino López said the Bolivarian armed forces want peace and stability in their country. Meanwhile, Venezuela's foreign minister has condemned the actions of Portuguese bank Novo Banco of freezing over 1.5 billion euros of Venezuela's funds at the request of the U.S. government. On Twitter, Jorge Arreaza said this illegal action affects the entire population of Venezuela, as they are destined for importing medical supplies, food, industrial equipment, and to treat also malaria, HIV, and other chronic diseases, as well as to pay standing financial commitments with international bodies and pay salaries of foreign service personnel. Arreaza said that while his Portuguese counterpart announced that banks do not answer to the Portuguese government, it's clear that they do answer to the requests of the U.S. government. Venezuela has continuously requested that Portugal stops the illegal freezing of Venezuelan assets. In Russia, President Vladimir Putin has met with China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi in Sochi. They discussed regional and international issues ahead of Chinese President Xi Jinping's state visit to Russia, scheduled for June. This year, the two states will celebrate 70 years of bilateral relations. Russia also welcomed the U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo to Sochi for his first official visit to the country. The top U.S. diplomat arrived in this southern city, having cancelled his planned trip to Moscow. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said his meeting with Pompeo was productive.
I want to say once again, the discussion was frank, intensive and substantial. I hope that the visit of Mike Pompeo will not only contribute to the improvement of the atmosphere of Russia-US relations, but will also allow us to take small but real steps in resolving practical issues which need to be resolved. The issues of bilateral agenda and also of the regional and world agenda.
And also on their agenda was Venezuela, with Russia saying that U.S. threats against them had nothing in common with democracy. Lavrov confirmed Russia's commitment to the sovereign will of the people, once again calling for dialogue between President Maduro and the opposition.
As far as the international agenda is concerned, we discussed many issues openly, including the situation in Venezuela. Russia believes that it's the people of the country who should define their future. It's important that all patriotic and politically responsible powers of the country begin a dialogue, and a number of countries in the region actually call for it.
Palestinians are marking the 71st anniversary of Nakba, which means catastrophic in Arabic. It commemorates the expulsion in 1948 of hundreds of thousands of Palestinians from their homes in Palestine to create the State of Israel. The expulsions were carried out by invading. Zionist militias eventually left millions of Palestinians stateless. Israel has continued to expand its occupation in the West Bank and Jerusalem, with war crimes and human rights violations making millions of Palestinian refugees unable to return home. Right now, the Great March of Return is taking place, and 13 injuries have been reported so far. To talk more about this special day, we are joined live by an activist from the BDS movement, Aya Al-Ghazzawi from Gaza. Hello, Aya. Thank you for joining us.
Hello. Thank you for having me today with you.
So explain to us the significance of Nakba Day to the people of Palestine.
Okay, the Nakba Day that had taken place in 1948, exactly on May the 15th, when Zionist gangs have killed hundreds of Palestinians, massacred hundreds more, and displaced and dispossessed more than 750,000 Palestinians. Those 750,000 Palestinians have become refugees. Some of them managed to stay in Palestine by going to Gaza and the West Bank, and most of them couldn't make it. So they went to diaspora, whether in local areas like the Arab countries around, or international or countries around the world. So Israel also have wiped out more than 500 villages. So from that very moment, Palestine has been bleeding. Israel has not stopped committing massacres against us. So if you ask me, the Nakba of Palestinians is not only about 1948. It's about the ongoing Nakba massacre, settler colonialism, and apartheid. So it has become clear now that Israel doesn't want us in Palestine. So it declares itself a Jewish state only. So which means that it is an apartheid state. And apartheid, means the racial segregation as happened in South Africa. So in South Africa, there were places like only for whites only, and blacks were prohibited to go near these places. Here we have the same in Palestine. It's only about Jews. So non-Jews don't have the privilege to go anywhere. I am basically a refugee. So I come from Jaffa, my city. I have been born in Gaza. I never been to Jaffa. I only see Jaffa actually in pictures when I search for it and when I look it for my history. So after the Nakba, or even in the same year of the Nakba, the United Nations have issued a resolution which is 194. This resolution, it clearly stipulates the right of Palestinians to go back to their homeland, and not only to go back, but also to be compensated for all the suffering they have been enduring since 1948, and also to compensate all those Palestinians who don't want that. So we are in 2019, and we are asking, what happened to that resolution? Why it hasn't been implemented so far? And that's why actually we have gone out marching in the Great Return March, which was launched in March 30, the land day of 2018, to remind the world that we are still refugees, we are still dispossessed, and we still remember what happened to us, to Palestinians in Nakba in 1948, and we also still remember the resolution 194 that guarantees my right as a refugee to go back to my homeland. Actually, Nakba is not about individual memory or individual case. It's about a collective memory. So we Palestinians share a collective history, and we also share bitter memories of longing and belonging to our land. We want to go back to our land, to our properties, which Israel has stretched its hand over. So yes, from this position, I want to say to the world, we did not forget what happened to us in 1948, and we shall not forget ever. Ben Gurion, the first prime minister for the Jewish state of Israel, has once said that the old will die and the young will forget. And we are here now, the indigenous population of Palestine. We are telling Israelis and Zionists, we have not forgotten. Maybe the old die, yes, but the young will not forget about that, because it is a history that keeps passing on from one generation to another generation. So we will keep reminding each other of what happened to us in 1948 until we go back one day to our homeland and end the status of being a refugee.
Aya, for our last question, this year Nakba comes at a time when the U.S. President Donald Trump said that the issue in Palestine with Israel will be resolved by this called deal of the century. What do Palestinians think about this deal?
We are against the deal of the century 100%, because the deal of the century aims at liquidating the Palestinian cause, aims at ending the cause of refugees. How? By declaring the whole historic Palestine as the state of Israel. So we Palestinians want to say that we don't want the deal of the century, and it is a betrayal and ongoing nurturing the ongoing injustice against the Palestinian people. The deal of the century has already started. I mean, last year on May 14th, the U.S. moved its embassy to Jerusalem as a step of declaring Jerusalem as the capital of the Jewish state, like all of Jerusalem. And this is another Nakba for Palestinians. No, Jerusalem is the eternal capital of Palestine, of historic Palestine. And now we are in the danger of annexing the West Bank territories to the state of Israel. I mean, Kushner said it. Whether you talk about one-state solution or two-state solutions, it means only one thing, only Israelis. And then they escalated this and translated their sayings into practical steps by moving the U.S. embassy. And it's not only about the U.S. deal of the century. Nowadays, maybe you have heard of the Eurovision contest. We as Palestinians and me as a BDS activist have directed a call to all contestants who are participating in Eurovision 2019, which is to be held on apartheid Israel. We call upon them to boycott Israel and to boycott this contest for this year, because it helps fight worse Israeli crimes that amount to war crimes and crimes against humanity. We are thanking those who listen to the voice and to the call of the indigenous population of Palestine and pulled out of this contest. And we are
Aya, thank you very much, Aya.
To take part in it. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much for your time. We are fortunately running out of it, but thank you very much. That was Aya Al-Ghazzawi from Gaza. But we have more stories coming up, so don't go away.
Follow the most important global events through a comprehensive perspective. With a team of journalists in 25 locations around the world to convey our people's reality. From the South, weekdays, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. Supporters of Guatemala's former Attorney General, Thelma Aldana, have gathered outside the Constitutional Court demanding that she be allowed to run for president. The Constitutional Court will decide on Wednesday whether Aldana will be allowed to run in the upcoming election. Aldana is currently facing arrest on charges of alleged embezzlement and tax fraud. Her party, the Semilla Movement, has been requesting her immunity, but the Supreme Court rejected the request on Monday.
We have no doubt that there is no legal basis to bar Thelma Aldana from the presidential race. These are political expressions of fear of a captured state and political institutions.
Thousands of teachers and doctors have once again taken to the streets of Tegucigalpa, Honduras, to protest against plans to privatize education and health services. The protest was called by the Teachers Union and the Honduran Medical Association, who say the plans will lead to mass layoffs in the public sector. This is the third time in 4 weeks that teachers and doctors have protested against the proposed plan. Last month, 3 people were injured after police attacked protesters.
What we want is to abolish all the MPCS, I mean the legislative decrees, and start dialogue between health and education with the state about what we really want, which is to capitalize free education and health, and above all, better spaces for health and education.
Students, teachers, and other education workers in Brazil have embarked on a general strike in protest against government plans to cut funding to education sectors. Most education institutions have said they only have financial resources to function until September. Wednesday's protests are a culmination of the mass protests that have been taking place in cities across the country. Students and teachers have vowed to continue protesting until their concerns are addressed. The U.S. Federal Aviation Administration has downgraded Costa Rica's air safety rating. Authorities say Costa Rica does not comply with international civil aviation safety standards. Now, with only a Category 2 rating, Costa Rica will not be allowed to establish new services to U.S. destinations, but the country's carriers can continue operating existing routes to the U.S. We continue in Costa Rica, where several lakes have dried up in the capital, San Jose. A drought has hit the region as a result of the El Niño phenomenon.
Before, on Sundays, I used to come here to the lake of La Paz Park. I came as a family with my wife, with my son, and we enjoyed riding in the boats that had the gentleman who provided the services.
We're taking one last break, but stay with us.